Hello, this is Coach Aaron Saft in the Running His Life podcast. My guest today, as promised, is Zach Dean. Zach has done some amazing things over the course of his life, of course, but just in the past few years in the ultra world, Zach has been doing just about everything. It's pretty incredible to follow his journey and to be his coach. So I'm going to get into his story here in just a moment, but I had a question come in and I figured I'd answer it on the front end, and just to make sure I don't forget, Ron wrote in and asked me about shoe rotation. How do I do shoe rotation? And it's a great question. So what happens with our shoes with typical foam? Okay, this is with shoes that are built with your standard EVA, ethyl vinyl acetate. So that's the traditional compound. Now your super shoes are going to be a little bit more resilient to this breakdown just because of the uniformity of the foam. So what happens in EVA is that when the foam is injected with air, there are air bubbles of all different sizes. And when we run and compress the foam, the larger air bubbles in the foam tend to absorb the smaller bubbles, and that's what leads to the compression and the degradation or breakdown of your midsole. Whereas in these super foams, they're actually they're uniform size beads of foam that they expand and place together so that there is not the same type of breakdown. Now, there's so many different foams out there. So what we're looking at is as you go run, you're compressing your midsole. Now, it's not noticeable, but each time you run, the midsole will compress and break down just a hair, right? So what we do by rotating shoes is we allow more time between runs for the shoe to decompress. EVA typically decompresses in anywhere from 24 to 36 hours. EVA is affected by temperature. You can feel it when you go run. It's definitely squishier when it's hot, and it's more firm when it's cold. So EVA is affected by the temperatures, whereas your super shoes aren't going to be as affected by the temperatures just because of the chemical compounds of which they're made. So with that said, if you're running in a standard EVA shoe, and let's say you run at 6 p.m. and then you wake up at 6 a.m. and go to run on the same pair of shoes, you've given your shoes 12 hours to decompress. They are not fully decompressed, so what's going to happen now is you're going to compress them a little bit further because they haven't rebounded to the full extent. Okay, so that's where shoe rotation comes in handy if you don't want to break your shoes down quickly. Right? And now, is it cost efficient to have two pairs of shoes? Is it environmentally friendly to have two pairs of shoes? Maybe not. It depends on how frequently you are running. If you're running every other day, you're giving your shoes enough time to decompress, and you most likely won't have to rotate shoes. If you have a pair of road shoes and a pair of trail shoes, and you're varying which one you use, then you've created this rotation and given shoes as long as you're not doing too much running back to back. So if you did a road run one day and a trail run the next day, you've given your road shoes enough time to decompress where you could wear them the third day. Again, it's looking at how frequently you're running. What is the time span between runs that you want to start to justify? Is it worth buying another pair? You will get longer out of the shoe because what happens when you put a new shoe into rotation is that now we go back to that scenario. If you run at 6 p.m. on pair 1 and then 6 a.m. on pair 2, now pair 1 has time to recover. It has time to decompress. It will decompress further and last longer. Okay, is that totally necessary? No. You're going to expend, and again, it's going to depend on how much you're running, right? There's no real formula to tell us, this shoe is going to last this many miles, right? That's really hard to say because there's so many different factors going into it. Are you running on dirt roads? Are you running on paved roads? How heavy are you? How tall are you? How much force do you apply? So many things go into how long a shoe is going to last. So, if you're into trying to make the shoes last as long as possible, shoe rotation is a good idea. We do know that super shoes do not last as long. So, again, if you put those into the rotation, right, you're going to break them down the more you use them, no matter what. They don't decompress as well as your road shoes. The foam that they're made of, they just do not have the longevity of an EVA, right? So you have to anticipate that in the front end. Now, do you buy 2 pairs of super shoes to rotate those and make those longer? Man, that's really getting into an expense that, I don't know if you're willing to incur. So you have to decide whether it's worth buying an extra pair of shoes to put into the rotation. So again, if you're running at 6 a.m. every morning, you're giving your shoes pretty good time to decompress. They should last you a good, long while. You do not necessarily need to put another pair of shoes into the rotation. Okay, so understand that. There are certain foams that are out there, like TPU, that those are designed to last a bit longer. The Adidas Boost, when it came out, has more durability. Innovate has incorporated graphene into their midsole, which is designed to give the shoe more durability and longevity. So there are shoes out there that are designed to last longer. Okay, and always the conversation is about sustainability. What's going to be the most sustainable? How quickly are you going to go through shoes? How quickly are you hopefully recycling them? I always take my shoes to either Goodwill or to my run shop that accepts them and does something with them, a recycling program, a reuse program. So I encourage you to find those programs and do what you can to not just throw shoes away. Sometimes that can be tough to do, and you may not have that resource in the area. But there are shoe recycling programs out there that will pay for your shipping. So it just takes a little bit extra time to look up. I use the Moore Foundation. I'll try to put that in the show notes to remind you about the Moore Foundation. You can look into them. We use them at the run shop. It's not something that I've used personally, so I can't testify to what they do on a personal level, so far as you just wanting to get it into their hands. But I will put that information in, and then perhaps it will give you a few other resources. If you look up more foundations, if you Google it, perhaps it will bring up a few others that will give you a possibility as to where you can send your shoes. Okay, Ron, I hope that answers your question. Maybe it gets you thinking about, do I really need to rotate my shoes? And if you have further questions, if I didn't expound upon something or I didn't talk about a compound that you're interested in, let me know. Happy to go deeper into that topic. But that's what I suggest on shoe rotation. So, what I would encourage, and this is just, an aside, is that if you do get a second pair of shoes to put into your rotation, I would make them pretty different than your first pair. And what I do, and this is just for an example, I'm not suggesting this is what anybody needs to do, is I have a pair of Altras that are 0 drop, and it's my Altra Olympus 5, the trail shoe. That's kind of my main go-to as a trail shoe. But I also have a few options that have 6 or 8 millimeters of ramp in the Innovate line. So I'm using different tendons and muscles. We oftentimes think about, the overuse of the shoe, but, the conversation should also include the overuse of our body day in and day out. If you think about how many steps we're taking given a certain ramp, if I'm in 0 drop all the time, I'm putting a lot of strain on my lower, posterior chain, my Achilles, my plantar, and calf. Whereas a higher ramp shoe, now the forces shift to more the knee and the hip. So it's good to use different muscles, different tendons, and use them in different ways, varying the ramp of the shoe. Okay, or the drop of the shoe. So what I encourage you to do is have 2 very distinct ramps. Not necessarily that you have to go all the way up to 10 or 12 millimeters. That was the old kind of school. That's what all these shoes, it was really hard to find any shoe that was under even 10 millimeters of ramp. But nowadays we have plenty of options. But creating that versatility in your rotation is a great thing for your body. So, if you're thinking about having a second pair of shoes, I might suggest not buying the same pair for your rotation. I might suggest finding something that's comfortable and has a different style of ramp, okay? So you don't get an overuse injury. All right. So again, any further questions on that, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, Ron, for the question. I really appreciate that. And now I want to get into my conversation with Zach Dean. I hope you enjoy. And at the end of the conversation, I'll come back on and catch up with you guys about everything else that's going on. All right, Zach, here we are, face to face.
How's it going?
Good. Zach he's going to run us through a bunch of things, but the amazing thing is this is over a short time period that you've done all of this, which is crazy. So start back about little Zach Dean.
Yeah.
Where did little Zach Dean come from?
Little Zach Dean, I grew up in Lula, Georgia, northeast Georgia, and wasn't really too much of an athlete when I was growing up, just normal little league, peewee. And then by the time I got to high school, my friends and I were not really interested in sports, so we didn't really, I didn't really do football or anything. I did, I would say like a third of a season of cross country and track, and then just couldn't stick with it. And so not much of that. But I did grow up whitewater kayaking.
Okay.
And that was kind of like all of my athletic journey was in whitewater.
Any hiking?
Yeah, we'd go on hikes with my dad and stuff when I was a kid, dad and mom, and just like normal family weekends, driving up to, there's all kinds of beautiful stuff in North Georgia to go see. So
right.
it's just.
And you say we, brothers and sisters?
Yeah. I've got two brothers that I grew up with, another who is much older, who I didn't grow up with, but we're also very close. Yeah, me, mom, dad, two brothers, there's just so much in North Georgia, which I was really happy to do the Georgia Loop. That was one of my favorites of the Brutes, but we'll get into that. And then when I graduated high school, I went to work on the Chattooga River. Mm-hmm. It's a great stretch of whitewater on the border of Georgia, border of South Carolina and Georgia.
Yep.
And kind of close to Clayton, Georgia. It's a landmark that a lot of people know. And pretty much spent like 8 or 10 years there.
Wow.
And during that time, I was running. That's kind of when I started running.
Okay.
I was working as a photographer on the Chattooga for a while.
Cool.
And so part of that job is you kayak down with the trip, take pictures, and there's a good couple of hours where you're just kind of sitting, waiting. And then the trip finishes with a boat ride across the lake, like on a little motorboat.
Okay.
And then like a 45-minute bus ride back. And what I figured out is that I could paddle ahead of the trip and get a run in.
Okay.
And I just thought that'd be, otherwise I'm just sitting there,
right,
just waiting.
Yep.
And it occurred to me, I'm like, man, I could just get paid to go for a run. I'm getting paid. I might as well get out there. So I started doing runs, did that for a couple years, just a couple times a week. When I wasn't hungover, I would go. And so that was a big part of my journey. But then after a couple years of that, my friend Larissa, who she's a ultramarathon runner. She's a really strong, great runner. She's done 100-milers and 50Ks and all kinds of impressive stuff. She knew I was running a lot, and she had signed up for the Chattooga 50K, which was a 50K. I don't know how many years it went, but not a lot. It was put on by a woman named Terry Hayes, Ultras on Trails. Mm-hmm. And Larissa was like, "You want to do a 50K?" And I was like, "I can't do that." She's like, "You can do it. You've been running a lot, and
And what was a lot at that time?
Probably 4 to 6 miles, 3 to 4 times a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when was this 50K?
In June.
And it was how far? Like how far away was that from where you were?
It was not far. It was like
a few weeks.
2
days.
At that point, no, it was probably 2 months, I think.
Okay,
yeah, it may have been April or something when she mentioned it, and I think it was in June. That was in 2011, so I don't remember the exact timeline, but I remember going home and telling Katie that I was going to sign up for a race. Right. And she was like, "Oh, cool. How long is it?" And I was like, "It's a 50K." And she's like, "Have you ever done a race before?" I said, "No, I've never done any race." And she really wasn't surprised at all. And did that. It went really well. Larissa and I ran the whole race together. Nice. And we were like 8th and 9th.
That's awesome.
So it was really cool.
Did you change anything in your training?
No. I knew nothing. I was just literally
going
out and running.
The longest run was like 6 miles.
I did do 120-mile run.
Okay. Did you build up to that, or
I did build up to that. Okay. I started doing pushing the 6 miles to 8 miles. Yeah. And I did start running more often just to get ready. And then that 20-miler went pretty well. It's very hot, but yeah. And then the 50K, I had no idea what I was doing. It was just going out and running for fun, and it was so great.
What was your idea of like nutrition and hydration, if you had any? None.
Yeah. No, I think I didn't have a pack or anything. I just carried handheld water bottle. There weren't very many aid stations. I may have had a Camelback on, just like I can't remember. It's been a long time. The one thing, my most memorable moment of that race, the one thing that I remember is that my wife Katie volunteered at an aid station. Okay. And this was an out and back race. Okay. And so the aid station was about 14 miles. So, the aid station almost all the way out, and then you run down and back up this short little out and back to the aid station. So it was at the top of a climb. Larissa and I came up the climb, and we were hiking at that point because it was pretty steep. Yep. And we come up to the aid station, and Katie looks at both of us and goes, "You guys aren't running very fast." And the other aid station volunteers looked horrified. They were like, "Who is this girl?" Like, it was hilarious. Katie still loves telling people that story too. So, but yeah, it went well. And shortly after that, Katie and I moved to Athens, Georgia, and I was still running a bit, but then I think I just was kind of trying to run too much. Started trying to do 10 miles, I was trying to do like 50-mile weeks, and just on trails around Athens, and started getting like foot injuries was what really got me. And then I got busy. I was working multiple jobs. Katie and I were trying to get careers started and stuff like that. So, running just kind of fell off, and then I probably didn't run a total of 100 miles in the next 10 years. Yeah. So
right on. What spurs you to kind of get back into it?
So Katie and I, we've always been kayakers. That's how we met. That's definitely how we both kind of identified athletically for a long time is, we're kayakers. Mm-hmm.
And then you've got a sponsor too.
Yep. Liquid Logic, which, being an ambassador for a kayak company is really just being a good part of the person in the community. They're not looking for, obviously they have the really good athletes who are kayakers, but my in was I take care of all their cars and they know me, and I've been paddling for almost 30 years now. And and they just...
Well, it's just cool because they're a local brand.
They are, Liquid Logic.
Cool that you're able to support a brand that's local. I mean, and how can we say that in running? There's there's like no brands.
It is very cool that one of... I've been paddling their boats for a long time, and I can literally just go to the factory and, see how they're made. And
that's cool.
It's very cool that it's a 5-minute drive from where I work. So
that's awesome.
But I actually reached out to them they've come out with a lot of really great new designs recently, and I reached out to some people I know over there, and I was like really looking to motivate myself to get paddling more. And it's like, hey, what do you guys think about me being an ambassador? So they were totally all about it. It was great. That's cool. Made me really happy. So yeah.
What do your obligations look like? We just did a podcast.
Social media, a couple of social media posts, and which I wasn't even on any social media for the past 3 or 4 years. And then after I talked to them about the ambassadorship, that was the talk we had. And I was like, I'll get back on, I'll do some posts. And so I try and do as much as I can, but I'm just not a very outgoing, extroverted person. So,
well, I mean, this is kind of, I haven't had a guest that has had this, capacity in the past. We typically were just runners.
Yeah.
How do you find the balance, like between kayaking and running?
It's tough, for sure. And I have been trying to kind of prioritize running for the last few years, just because kind of just like jumped in the deep end and wanted to immerse myself in it.
Right. Well, we'll talk about that in a second.
And I didn't realize how much I'd love it, but I haven't really paddled a ton in the past 2 years. And then recently I just make it a point to at least go once a week, which going paddling for 2 hours of actual on the water time is much more of a commitment of your day than going for a 2 hour run. You can go for a 2 hour run and it takes 2 hours.
Right.
Going paddling for 2 hours is at least a 6 hour endeavor, because loading up your gear, driving to the river, running shuttle, paddling, unpacking everything. Like it's much more of and I think that was one of the reasons I really started wanting to run a little bit more. So,
right on. And when you say like you wanted motivation to paddle more, what does a competitive kayak season look like?
Kayaking is I would describe it as much more of a lifestyle sport. Yeah, there's not. There are races. There are whitewater races. There's many different disciplines of paddling too. There's slalom paddling. There's lots of flat water. But what Katie and I do is more is just more whitewater. And there are some big races that people do down steep creeks and like class 5 rivers that are more like the kind of extreme kayaking that you would imagine.
Sure.
And I don't really do any of that. I mean, I paddle down that stuff, but I'm not racing anything. And like I said, to me, it's always been more of a lifestyle sport. I'm a very good kayaker, but I'm not a very fast kayaker.
Fair.
So it's a little different than running. So yeah.
Right. So you're realizing that kayaking was, it was absorbing a lot of time and taking a lot of time. So you said you kind of want to take more of a deep dive into running. So when was that, and what did that look like?
Yep. So after Athens, Katie and I moved up here. Mostly we moved here just to be in the mountains, and we somehow, when we moved up here, we switched to mountain biking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And just made some really good close friends who were mountain bikers, and so we're got really into that. Katie had a pretty bad injury mountain biking, and then that kind of slowed us both down. And then Katie ran for Congress, and that kept us on the couch even more, which was that was an amazing experience. And that was she was
what year?
That was she would have been 2020.
2020.
Yeah, right.
So COVID year?
Yes. Dude, I should know this.
That's okay. Yeah.
The last cycle when Madison Cawthorn was...
Okay.
So 22. Yeah.
22.
And it just... That really took a lot of our time and effort. Plus, I was starting a business during all this time, and we just both kind of were slacking athletically. And then after the campaign and after we both kind of like came out of COVID, just all the stuff that everybody went through, we decided to go on a fitness journey. And for me, that meant running. Okay. It was just, to me, it just was like, I've done this before. I remember loving it, and it's so easy. I can just buy a pair of shoes, and I know that turns into a whole nother thing, but when it starts, that's the beautiful thing about it. Yeah. You can have a pair of shoes and some shorts, and you can just go run. And I think that's what gets everybody hooked. Everybody who loves running is the simplicity. You know, when you're trying to go 100 miles, all that changes, but it's not really simple anymore. But yeah, so I was just doing like 2 miles every couple times a week. Mm-hmm. And then I was like doing 4 miles a couple times a week. And then I was doing 6 miles, and then I had to go see my physical therapist, and nothing that was really, I haven't had any injuries, thank goodness, but just trying to, I was running too fast all the time. But so then one of my good friends in Chattanooga knew I was started running a bunch. Mm-hmm. We just had talked about it, and he's like, well, there's this 50K in November. It's the Upchuck 50K. And this was 2022. And I hadn't done a 50K since 2011. So I was like, I'm going to do that again. I think I can do that. Yeah, didn't have a training plan or coaching or anything. Just decided to, you know, get out there and give it a go again. Yeah. And it was absolutely horrible. It was so bad. I pretty much walked the entire second half of that race. No nutrition, no hydration. I mean, you know, I had like some water bottles and Snickers bars, but yeah, it was real bad. It hurt me pretty good for probably 2 weeks. I was not injured, you know, I came around, but I felt like everything was injured for a while. It was, so, and I think that experience actually really motivated me, because it was like, now I have to get revenge. Yeah, so that was my first really big thing back after all that time off. So,
right on.
Yeah.
So from there, yeah, you obviously you wanted to go back and do something.
So the same kind of group of friends who do that upchuck, there's a bunch of whitewater people who do it. And that same group of friends, a lot of them do the Art Lobe every year on the winter solstice. So I was on the fence about that, because upchuck hurt me so bad, but I was, you know, I've got a month and a half to recover. Like, I'm in shape. I shouldn't have to like get a lot more training in. I can just, and it's a lot slower pace. You know, we did it in 9.5 hours, or maybe even close to 10 hours. And that went much better. Still didn't eat enough or drink enough. But I made it, and it didn't hurt nearly as bad. And then, so that was December. And then at the beginning of the year, I decided I wanted to do an ultra marathon once a month for all of 2023. And that was my goal. I did pretty well. I did South Mountains 50K in January. That one was my best race to that point. I can't remember all the races right now. I did something else in February.
That's probably on your ultra sign up if we brought that up.
Yeah. We can do that real quick.
That's cool. When did we get together?
We got together, I think we started in February. I think it may have been March of 23.
Okay.
Because I did South Mountains, and I was Wes Miller is my physical therapist at Anti-Fragile, and he was the one I started just saying. Mostly the reason I wanted to have a coach is injury prevention. What I learned coming on with you is that I was just trying to run too fast, too hard all the time. Right. Like every run, I was like 8-minute mile pace on trail, like 8:30, just always just maxed out heart rate, had no clue. And I could just see myself going down that injury road again, like I did the first time. So yeah, it was after South Mountains. I think I reached out, and I had no clue how coaching or anything was going to go,
Yep.
So let's see. South Mountains, and then I did something in February, but it's not on. Oh, the Mount Mitchell Challenge.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did that. That one went really well. Again, I'm like definitely solid mid-pack racer. I'm not trying to win any races. And, that one went well. I kind of learned a little bit and was not just trying to kill myself on the whole race. I just wanted to go out, have a great day, and do, that would have been my longest run to that point, 40 miles. So, then I did March, the Heartbreaker 50 miler, so another increase. And that was the race that I learned about lube. I had such a great day in the Mount Mitchell Challenge, and it was just pouring the rain the whole day. No foot problems at all. It was like running down a creek on the way back down, and there was no issue.
Seems like that most years.
Yeah. And then in the Heartbreaker in 23, it was pouring in the morning. I didn't have a drop bag or a change of socks or a change of shoes. I had no lube on my feet. Nothing. Like, I was just totally oblivious that all of that was a thing that people do. Yeah, it was terrible. It was just absolutely awful. I walked so much because around, I think it was around the summit coming down is when it really started to hurt. And, like, I couldn't run downhill at all because that was what was killing me.
Gotcha.
So got down to the bottom of Buncombe Horse and took my socks and shoes off and just like tried to let them dry out. But at that point, I had like walked so much that I was actually getting close to the cutoff.
Oh my God.
And so I got my socks and shoes back on. Somebody had some lube that I put on my feet, and was able to, hike up. What is it? Bald Knob. Yep. And then the rest of the race, it kind of got to that point of pain where it's just like, whatever, it's going to hurt if I walk and it's going to hurt if I run. Right. So I was finally able to like get that in my mind and run in Jarrett Creek Road.
Yep.
So, yeah, learned that lesson pretty good.
Right.
Now I'm like, I've got a system and it works. So that was the Heartbreaker.
What does your system look like?
I really like Body Glide on my feet.
Okay.
And just lube up really well. And I actually, in the Cloud Splitter and the socks that I use just work for me. I use the Features socks and that, and just I feel like having the right pair of shoes is a really big part of that too.
You're a Speed Goat guy.
I have been wearing the Speed Goats. I went through all the different shoes.
And did you go with the wide?
I have to do the wide.
Yeah.
I tried it on the Hoka so many times and they just never fit. And then somebody one day was like, "Have you tried them in wide?" It's like, I didn't think they made them in wide. And they are great. I've gone through like 4 pairs of them because they wear out really fast. Yeah. And then if I stop for a sock change, I just do the same thing. Clean them, lube them up with a body glide or foot glide and new socks, and it just works great for my feet. Yeah. It's pretty simple, but it works really well. Yeah. Good. I found something I like, and Cloud Splitter, I didn't even change my socks or shoes. 100 miles with no blister. It was crazy.
Right. Okay. And that was that October.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the biggest for the year, right? Was Cloud Splitter.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, at first, because we went back and forth, because you were still doing every month an ultra, and initially we thought it was going to be the 100K.
Yep.
But you decided to go big.
Yes. So I did another race. Did the Firefly 12-hour. Then I did Quest for the Crest, and then in June, that was when I did Pitchell.
And that was the beginning of the Brutes.
And I had no idea what Brutes was when I did Pitchell.
Right.
I didn't know that was a thing. I was doing Pitchell because it's, it's right in our backyard, and it just seemed like a really cool run. And I wanted to get that 100K distance in.
In June in North Carolina.
Yeah. Seems like a good idea. I can say that on all of my Brutes runs, I have gotten so lucky with the weather. It was overcast that day. Nice. It was, just beautiful. When I got down to the Folk Art Center and then hiking up, when you get to is it the Lunch Rock, or what do they call that view?
Just past Craven?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Lunch Rock.
Yeah, Lunch Rock. It was like in the valley. It was perfectly sunny, beautiful day. It was cooler than it had been all week. And then climbing up from there, it just kind of got overcast and was nice and cool for the rest of the run.
That's awesome.
The grass up top
is worse.
Is really bad.
God. Yeah, especially up at Pinnacle, Lane Pinnacle.
That's where it was.
Oh my God. Yeah, I did it July 4th, and it was just it was actually I was fortunate too. It was a mild day for July 4th, but it was wet. And then when you get to Walker Knob, those rocks, my gosh. Yeah. I thought I was going to pull a groin muscle. I kept slipping. Oh, God. I'll never forget. I had Lone Peaks on, and I was cursing the ultra Lone Peaks. Yeah. I was like, these things have no grip.
I think I actually wore Lone Peaks on that run.
Did you?
Yeah. That was when I was still doing all the ultras. I had Lone Peaks and Olympus and whatever the really minimalist one
Superior.
is. Yeah. So
Pitchell went pretty well, though.
Pitchell was good. That was, I think, one of my best efforts that I've done of all of them.
Yeah.
My goal was 18 hours, and I came at 17:54 or something.
That's
17, right under.
And you did that one self-supported solo?
I did have, so my friend Otto, he heard me talking about it, and he actually just was like, I'll help you with that. He knew I kind of was looking for help, but I was going to do it self-support.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'd like to see that. And so he dropped me off. I did the traditional midnight start time, and I stashed some water at the French Broad. And he met me at the Folk Art Center in the morning. So He dropped me off, and then he went home and slept, and then met me at the Folk Art Center. He made me some bacon and coffee.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. And then he pretty much just followed me up the Parkway.
Yeah.
Which was just so cool of him to do that.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
He's working on my Chevy right now.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, I've talked about Pitchell on this podcast numerous times, but if you're new to the podcast or don't know anything about Pitchell, here in Western North Carolina, we have the Mountains to Sea Trail, and the Pitchell route created by Adam Hill starts at the summit of Mount Pisgah. So our tradition is to hike up and get up to Mount Pisgah for midnight. So you start your hike earlier to get up there for midnight, and that's your start time, midnight. You start on the top of Mount Pisgah, you run down into the parking lot and hit the Mountains to Sea Trail, and then you follow the Mountains to Sea Trail all the way to the summit of Mount Mitchell. And as Zach was just saying, it follows along the Parkway, so it's a great opportunity for crewing. which it's such a beautiful course. It is one of those, locals that everybody, is like, oh gosh, it's on my bucket list. So, traditional time of year is October for it. That's why I tease Zach. But he had no idea. Yeah, I gotta get it done, right? Because I don't even know about the BRUTES Challenge. I gotta get it done though. So, when did you figure out there was such thing as the BRUTES Challenge?
I think that you may have had a podcast about it shortly after that.
Was that with Natalie or with? Because I don't think Sarah had done it yet.
I may have actually just been like looking online and found it for some, like just looking at Pitchell.
Yeah,
stuff.
I had done one with Natalie. I'm just trying to remember what the timeline on that was. I think she did it because Sarah did it. I think Sarah did she finish it? I think she finished it this year. I have to look back. But anyhow, yeah. So you figured it out. There's such thing as
figured it out what the BRUTES Challenge was.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's just define it real quick. Because, obviously we've done episodes, but people may not know what the BRUTES Challenge is.
BRUTES Challenge is the Blue Ridge Ultra Trail Endurance Slam. And Charles has a really great description of it on his website. Charles Raffensperger is the creator.
I've had Charles on. I'll try to put that episode in there because I did an episode when Natalie finished up.
Yeah. Charles describes it as an unofficial, off-the-grid, down-home series of Southeast trail runs that should appeal to anyone who wants the challenge, adventure, and rewards that it offers. It will grind you down physically, but at the same time fill your soul. And so it's 5, that's his description. Yep. And so it's 5 just big kind of, I guess, classic trail runs that people do around the Southeast.
5 different states.
5 different states. And
all within
a year. Yeah. And these range from 57 to about 77 miles.
Right.
In length.
Right.
Yeah.
So North Carolina's Pitchell.
Yep.
South Carolina's
the Foothills Trail.
Right.
And then you have the Georgia Loop in Georgia. SCAR would be Tennessee, North Carolina border. Yep. And then, which follows the AT through the Smokies. And then the Massanutten Trail in Virginia.
Yep. Right.
Damn Massanutten Trail.
In which order did you choose to do them?
So I started with Pitchell. That's just how. Yes, that's just what happened.
Yep.
And then the next one I chose the Georgia Loop.
Okay. Any reason?
Because it was the shortest of the runs, and it was. I guess I just decided I love the heat, so I did summertime in Georgia again.
When was that?
I can't remember the exact. It was in September.
Okay.
Yep.
So let me just. June was Pitchell.
Yep.
Georgia Loop. So June, Pitchell. Okay. And then I'm just making my own timeline here. September, you did Georgia Loop. Okay.
Yep.
Right on.
And then I'm just trying to pull them up. Then I did Foothills.
Okay. And that was
in February of 24.
Okay.
And then I did SCAR in March, which, dude, I got so lucky on that one. I had friends who went out in late April, and had to drop because it was too cold.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I just got very lucky. And then the plan was to do Massanutten in May, but there were wildfires up in the area, and a bunch of that trail system was shut down. So I had to get it done before June 24th.
Which you just did.
Which I just did.
In June.
A week and a half ago.
Yep. Yeah. So you finished it. Now, just as a aside, like looking back and thinking about, okay, I just did these 5 courses. Mm-hmm. If you were to do it again, and I don't mean to give you nightmares, but if you were to do it again, do you think you have a specific order in which you do them, or did you like the order in which you did them?
I think it was fine. Yeah, it was. I would not do Massanutten in the summertime. I at least pulled 100 ticks off of myself over the 70 miles. Right. It was insane. Yeah. But, which, I didn't intend on doing in the summer. It was supposed to be in May, so a little earlier probably would have helped. But, no, I think the order was fine. Yeah. I think any order would be great. They're all just special in their different ways. And, I remember listening to your podcast with, the three who did it. Yeah. And everybody agreed that Massanutten was the worst, and I will add my.
Aside from the ticks, why would you say that?
It's overgrown for sure. A lot of pushing through weeds, and of course the big notorious thing about Massanutten is very rocky. Mm-hmm. That was the first run that of any length that my ankles were the sore or getting fatigued. Mm-hmm. I haven't had like ankle fatigue before,
right?
But it's just every step is off camber. There's definitely a couple spots where you can get into a rhythm. I remember at one point about 20 miles in thinking, this isn't quite as bad as I expected, and then it just gets way worse after that.
Sucker punch.
Yeah. But you can definitely get some good running in, but there are just a lot of rocks. There's a lot of sections where you might go 10 steps and then you're just hiking over rocks again. So,
gotcha. You think, is there an ideal time of year for that one? I mean, because winter, obviously, that could be anything.
I mean, ideal for all of them is spring or fall, but it'd be hard to fit 5 runs in without, of that length in without doing some of them in the summer or winter. So, I did choose, I guess, because of just how when I started and how the runs fell, kind of determined, and the other things I was trying to do, the cloud splitter and other stuff. I picked the Foothills Trail in February because it would be the warmest, the furthest south, and then Scar in March, just really hoping for good weather.
Yeah.
That could have gone either way. Like you told me that, and multiple other people. My friend Taft was like, he's like, "Are you going to be able to do it?" He's like, "It's going to be cold," and just it's like, well, I mean, I have to. I've got to get these done. I've already started.
Now with Foothills, did you have anybody with you?
I did. So I did Georgia Loop self-support without any drop bags or anything. I carried everything. I did Pitchell with support for the second half. Foothills, I had support. My good friend Eric, and then Katie both helped me out with that. And then Scar, you met me, and that was wonderful. Best cookie I've had.
Got him a crumble cookie.
Yeah. And then Katie picked us up at the end.
Yeah.
My mom dropped me off. And then for Massanutten, I went out mostly solo. I did have a friend who met me. I set 2 drop bags. There's a road number, I think 675, that crosses. It's a valley. You're running around the basically the ridges that go around this valley.
It's a loop,
and it's a big loop. And there's this road that crosses perpendicular to the valley on the southern end. And it just happens to fall that the road crosses at about 24 miles and then at about 48 miles.
Oh, nice.
And so it's just perfectly spaced. So I had 2 drop bags at those 2 road crossings. And my friend Walt Barnett, who's an excellent runner, he is really good, who also worked down at Chattooga with me a long time ago. He met me, and he was going to plan on running to the end with me. I was moving so slow at that point that he didn't have time to follow me in. So he ran about 6 miles and then turned around and I sat down on a rock feeling just absolutely miserable because it was so hot. And I guess it was because of the fire, but a lot of the leaves were off the trees. And so there was no shade in this long section. And I literally sat down on a rock and was just like dying. And he's like, well, I got to go. Very experienced runner, so he knows you just get low points. And I wasn't in any danger or anything, but it was pretty funny. And we agreed, you know, when we started off together, we had talked about it, and he was just going to do an out and back because I was running behind my plan, which I usually am. And yeah, so
right on.
Then and he did have some extra water because I didn't quite have enough water with me. Yeah.
Any courses that you felt didn't have like the resources for you to do it solo? Like, were there? All of them had pretty good water sources.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia Loop. I went a good hour and a half without any water at one point because one of the springs that I had mapped out was dry. But I was probably carrying 4 to 5 liters of water at any time for that. And Georgia Loop and Massanutten water is more difficult. You have to carry more water.
What resources did you use to figure this stuff out?
Man. I'm trying to think of where I got all the info from. The Charles website is very good, and then because he's got all of the finishers listed, and a lot of those have Strava links, and so I would look at people's Stravas and you know, see their course descriptions, times, just stuff that they were doing, and you know, a lot of these routes are like backpacking routes. Massanutten is not popular, but it is a mountain bike loop as well that people do, which I can't imagine they go any faster than the runners do on that route. But so there were really good resources for finding water, you know, like where the water spots are. A lot of just random blogs. But specifically for the BRUTES Challenge, there's not a lot of people have done it yet. So
yeah, what 12? You were 12?
I think I'm number 10.
10.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So
I know when you and I were running SCAR, you had like waypoints in your watch.
Yeah.
Was that from Strava,
No, I actually just made my own maps on the Coros app, and then uploaded those to my watch. So I would find these water points. I mean, some of it was like backpacker blogs or, you know, just whatever, Facebook, you know, and people would have, and it was all really reliable. Like every map I made, I would just put the water points in, upload it to my watch. Sometimes I'd check my phone just to, you know, make sure. And, that worked really well for all of the runs. Yeah.
Nice.
Except for that one dry one on the Georgia Loop.
Yeah.
That was a real bummer.
Yeah.
So.
Dang. Is there any way to find out if those things are dry? Like, I know SCAR has the Facebook page.
Yeah.
Where you can jump on that group and then, you know, ask for feedback. Does, you know, any of the others have anything similar?
You know, I should have known better because I did read that summertime on the Georgia Loop that some of those water sources get dry. It had been pretty wet out, and so I felt like I was pretty safe, but I should have just filled up more and not tried to, like, you know how it goes when you're trying to do a big effort and you're like in your head you're thinking, well, if I take a little less water, I'll save some weight and I'll definitely make it to the next spot. And then all of a sudden you're 2 hours behind what you planned on and you're out of water. And right. Everybody goes through that.
Right. Does, aside from the 1 year that you have to do all 5 within, are there any limits on any of the runs, like time limits? Like, do you have a certain amount of time to complete?
I think that it's pretty pretty casual.
Yeah.
I do think that Charles has some kind of limit for what is considered a run as opposed to a hike.
Sure.
But maybe like 34 something. I can't remember. I feel like I've read it somewhere.
Okay.
I think on because he also does a website with all the foothills finishers.
Yes.
And I think on there he has something posted that, he puts you on there if you're under like 34 hours or 36 hours or something like that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Any advice for those that are looking to do the BRUTES Challenge?
No, just just spend a lot of time finding those water points. Take more than you think you're going to need. I got pretty low on everything at the end of Massanutten. Slow on water. I used every bit of gel, food, nutrition that I had. And just reach out to people who've done it before. There's, a lot. There's 10 people who've done it now, and most of those people would be more than happy. I'd be more than happy to share any info or experience. I've got a couple of friends who are talking about it, thinking about it now, and and I just love telling people. Yeah. It's a life-changing experience so far. So it was amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But no, I don't know.
That's fine.
It's
So here's my idea.
Okay.
And if somebody does this before I attempt it, kudos to you. But to do all 5 back to back to back to back.
I love it.
So basically finish one, drive to the next,
yes,
and go.
You have mentioned that. Yes, yeah. I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, so I'd love to do all 5 in succession just by, and if I need sleep, I need sleep.
Yeah.
Right? But just do all 5 and set some kind of like FKT for here's how fast you can do it. Set a bar, right?
Yeah.
And see, because I know people can. I mean, guys like John Kelly, et cetera, they would they'd absolutely crush me. But I think that would be really cool adventure.
Yeah.
And just kind of push the body in a new way.
Yeah.
So that would be probably...
It's like 350 or something. Yeah. A little less.
Right.
Yeah.
Which now we're getting into the age of all these, crazy long...
And I am into it.
We'll talk about that in a moment. But, this whole BRUTES Challenge... Zach added to the challenge of this by throwing in Hellbender.
And Cloud Splitter.
Well, and Cloud Splitter, right. Yes. Yeah, we talked about Cloud Splitter.
Yeah.
But Hellbender, where did that come from? Why throw that into the midst of the BRUTE Challenge?
So when we moved up here, 2017... That was the first year?
2018.
Yeah. Okay. And that makes more sense, too, because... I moved up here in 2017, started mountain biking, and then we were out riding Heartbreak one day and saw some zombies walking down the trail. And they had numbers on and bibs and pacers, and I was like, what are these people doing? And that was kind of like the first time I had had the thought that once I figured out what they were doing, I got home and looked it up because I didn't know. I didn't want to bother them and ask them what y'all are doing. And got home, which now I know they would love to tell you what they're doing.
Yeah.
I love it when people are like, "What are y'all doing?" Yeah. You get to tell them running them at mile 95. And I'm like, what? So I got home, looked it up. And it was the Hellbender. It was the first year that y'all did the Hellbender 100. And
finishing down old Heartbreaker.
And that was the first time I was like, I wonder if I could do that. Didn't really run at all for the next couple of years. It was a while before I started running after that. But it definitely made me think about it. Mm-hmm. And then when I started this, I call it my running journey, doing upchuck. And I totally messed up upchuck. Then it was just like, all right, what can I do now? And then pretty much decided that Hellbender was my goal. Okay. Like at that point in 2022, I made Hellbender 100 my goal, because again, it's right in my backyard.
Yep.
I could have woken up in my bed and driven down there in the morning. I live in Swannanoa, and it starts down in Old Fort, so it was a 30-minute drive, but so I decided just to go camp down there. But yeah, it was, for some reason, it was just like, I want to do that one. Yeah.
So you had Foothills in February, Scar in March.
Yep.
And then Hellbender in May.
Yep.
And you finished off the Massanutten after Hellbender.
After Hellbender.
Yep. So how was recovery?
So I think in the past 2 years of running, I haven't really gotten any faster. But recovery has been the thing that I've noticed has improved dramatically. I mean, after that upchuck, and then after Art Loeb, after all of those runs, it was just like pain. I mean, it just hurt for days. Mm-hmm. And now Hellbender took it was very hard. Cloud Splitter was very hard, but it wasn't the same as it was when I started. Yeah. And then each one basically was getting shorter recovery. And Massanutten was the first time that I didn't just have night sweats for like 3 days.
Right.
Like I did Massanutten, as big an effort as all the other ones, and it was just fine. I just was, not abnormally sore. It was, I was as sore as I was going out doing like a 20-mile run. That was my favorite part of doing complete Massanutten, and it's probably because I walked for like the last 20 miles, but
that's part of it.
yeah. But yeah, the recovery has been the biggest improvement I think I've had in all of the running that I've been doing.
And talk about that. What does recovery look like?
Eating a lot of food, of course. I will usually just try and do some easy hiking, and then about a week of not really doing any running. I don't really try and go on any runs. After Massanutten, I did start a little sooner. I finished on Saturday and I was running on Friday. But yeah, just easy hikes, walking the dogs mostly, and just trying to eat well and get plenty of sleep. Yeah.
Do you feel like that adage that we've talked about, for every 10 miles you've run / raced, you should take a day of recovery?
I do tell people that.
Yeah.
Yes. Friends who are getting into it, I do feel like that is a very accurate.
Right on.
But when I started, it was definitely way more than that. It would be almost 2 days for every 10 miles.
Right.
And now it's getting less. So,
right. Yeah.
And of course you always feel really good, and then you try and go run, and then it doesn't work at all. So.
Right. Well, Zach was with me when we were going up Snooks, and I was absolutely destroyed. So he came up and helped me get to the top of Snooks, and I was like, dude, just go. just let me die here.
Never.
And he was good. He didn't want to leave, but I told him, I was like, I'm going to be fine. I'm here. I got people. So from that point, because he was doing great going up Snooks, and I slowed him down.
No.
So
I think you might have saved my race, honestly. I think I was going too hard at the beginning.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
gotcha.
I think it was a good thing for me.
Right on.
I think it helped me.
So you got into Neil's. Were you around Nathan when he fell?
I was. So we started off together. We went up Green Knob together.
Yeah.
And then he's a much faster runner than I am, so he was pulling away on the downhills.
Right. As he always does.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm a fast downhill runner, but he's very fast. And so he pulled away, and then when you get to the bottom of that descent and it flattens out and you get back to the mountains to sea.
Yes.
Right? That's the mountains to sea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
I caught up to him and didn't really, I was surprised to see him again, but I was like, well, maybe he's just,
low patch
chilling. Yeah. And it's like, maybe he's waiting on me. and I got up to him and I noticed that something was wrong. And yeah, he said he had fallen. Yeah. So I went in with him and immediately he got just surrounded by his whole crew and everything. So I was like, I'll come check on you before I get out of here. And then I, met with my crew, got all my stuff, and I looked over, and there were still like 10 people around him. So I just left because he didn't need anybody else bothering him at that point. There's a point where you just don't want anybody else asking you a question. So, yeah, I totally expected. I wouldn't have been surprised if I saw both y'all again. Honestly, yeah.
Well, how did the race go from there? Because that's 50K. So
it was okay. I always set like pretty high goals for myself, and sometimes I get them and sometimes I don't. But it just was not a great day. Like from the start, I just didn't feel, you just have days and you just don't feel great. So
I know.
Yeah. So but it went really well. 31 hours, and there wasn't any like major spot where I was like, this was my downfall. It was just didn't really. I don't know. Didn't run enough.
I think you ran plenty. I think part of it was the two challenges that you had right.
Maybe that had something to do with it. Yeah.
I think that has something to do with you're not getting faster either, but maybe someday we could just train.
Yeah. I think eventually I will get to where I just do 1 or 2 races a year and like really focus on those. But
you know how to challenge a coach, that's for sure.
Yeah. But man, those big efforts, it's just,
oh, I know. They're so alluring.
Yeah. And especially I have learned having you with me at SCAR was the first time I really had a pacer for, someone running with me. I guess Wes Miller did run a short section of Pitchell with me.
Okay.
But other than that, you for that section, and then Walt Barnett for the 6 or so miles of supposed to be 20 something. Those are the only times, and then for Hellbender, I had pacers.
Nice.
For most of the race, like from Neil's
did you
on.
Like that?
Yeah. I loved having them out there. I think I might do better without people because just knowing that I was running behind, it started to stress me out that people were waiting on me.
Yeah. Well, I could see that at SCAR too.
Yeah.
Because Katie was going to be at the finish. And I could see how much it was stressing you out.
And so the Georgia Loop and Massanutten, I think, were 2 of my favorites because I was just running back to the car the whole time.
Yeah.
And I knew Walt was going to be waiting on me, so I got a little bit anxious for that part. Luckily, he only lived an hour away, and I sent him my Garmin, so he knew where I was at. He knew I was going to be late.
Yep.
So it wasn't that one didn't stress me out too much, but
right. I kept waiting for your upload on Training Peaks, and I was like, well, I just looked at the Garmin and I saw the loop, and I was like, all right, he's done.
Yeah. There's no service at the campground there at where the Massanutten starts and ends, and so but I think just like being out there, there's just something special about being out there solo and just like having it all to yourself, and
that's like my favorite on Art Loeb, especially. I do that one. I try to do that one once a year, and same thing with the vertical mile and the Smokies.
Yeah.
Just go out there and go for a run and not worry about much. That's I agree with you. It's but you've got something even bigger.
Something even bigger
in the works. Tell us about that.
Yep. So the next one that I'm doing is the Bigfoot 200, which you are very familiar with and you've done. And
August, correct?
August 9th. That's gonna be crazy, man.
It is gonna be crazy. It is gonna be crazy. Now, so, what with all of the stuff that we just went over?
Yeah.
What made you think to sign up for?
Dude, I signed up for that thing. Just had no clue what I was getting into. I was like, man, I don't know why, but I'm just gonna do this. And I probably shouldn't have, but now I'm doing it, and it's.
And you're doing it in the style that you like it.
Yes.
So,
doing it solo, unsupported. I mean, there's aid stations, and so I'll have all that. I got to figure out drop bags. Right. But I'm not going to have crew or pacers. And I did have a friend, my friend MCAT, who crewed me for Hellbender. Originally, the plan was she was going to come and crew me for that.
Right.
And Hellbender was like a training,
Yeah. Try run.
But I decided that it was just going to cost too much to fly another person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is. It is a big expense.
It is a big expense.
$1,500 for a race entry. That's quite a bit. Then you throw on top of the flight, where you're staying. You're renting a van.
I'm going to rent a van and sleep in a van.
Down by the river.
Yep.
Okay. Zach's going to be a motivational speaker after this.
Yep.
Well, and so the plan. Do you have like a goal time? Are you looking to do anything? Finish is basically
I have to keep setting these goals and just coming up a little short. I think I'm just gonna go with this one.
Yeah.
I mean, I have times in my head, but I don't really want to.
That's.
I have like.
You don't have to put them out there.
Yeah, I just would rather keep it to myself and see how I feel that day. And I could, if I start off and just want to hike and enjoy it, then I'll do that. And if I start off and I'm just like feeling like today's the day, if today's the 3 or 4 days, then I'll just go for it. So, we'll see I just want to kind of see what happens. It's my first one, and I just think it's going to be an awesome experience either way. And if I finish early, then I'm just going to be like, well, my flight's on Wednesday, so what am I going to do? Might as well spend as much time out there as I can.
Yep. And the cool thing is, and I thought this was a pretty cool pro tip, like when you rented the van, you looked at, go ahead and tell us about that piece.
Rental cars, anywhere from $60 to $150 a day, depending on what you want.
Right.
And I was like, I wonder if I can rent a U-Haul van. And U-Haul vans are like $20 a day, but you have to pay for mileage.
Yep.
But at least I can rent the van. I'm driving it to the finish line. Mm-hmm. I'll hop on the bus and shuttle. And so those days when I'm not driving it, it's just sitting there. I'm not paying $60 a day or whatever for a rental car. It'll end up being like half as much, I think. I mean, I'm wondering if there's some kind of complication that I'm not aware of in my initial. Maybe somebody will reach out and be like, no, you can't do that because of this. But I think it's going to work fine.
I think so. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. When I'm traveling alone, I can be very simple. I don't need a bunch of stuff. I mean, I love a nice hotel room as much as anybody, but but yeah, so I'm hoping that'll work out fine. Yeah.
Right on. What's Zach's favorite nutrition on course?
It's changing all the time.
Yeah.
I've been using Morton. I use Morton.
Frito-Lays.
I don't know about the Fritos, man. After I was using them and then Scar, I didn't do so well with them at the end of Scar, so
that's what my dietitian, she's like, you could do Fritos, and I was like, no, I can't do Fritos.
I did them. I was doing them, but then at the end of Scar, you know how you just have those days where you're feeling bad on your run, and whatever you eat that day is like, that's the end of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So my new one is pretzel sticks.
Nice.
And I have to look at the brand. It might be Snyder's, but don't quote me on it. They're called dipping sticks. Mm-hmm. So they're a little thicker. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of between a rod and a stick. Mm-hmm. And it's 13 sticks is 23 grams of carbs.
Nice.
And I used them the other day. because we have so much sugar, and so my dietitian's like, hey, like, why don't we throw something kind of savory, salty in there? And the pretzel sticks, they were good. They were good. It's kind of a welcome addition. So what about for drink?
I use Tailwind. I do really well with Tailwind and water. So yeah, I've tried a couple other ones, and Tailwind is just the one I keep going back to, and it's worked really well for me so far. So.
Yep, right on. Yeah. Cool.
I've been thinking about trying other stuff though. I'm kind of reaching my limit on how much I'm spending on nutrition. And so what I really want to do is start to look for some, Tailwind and Morton and Spring, that stuff just gets
pricey.
$4 for 76 calories.
Right. I know, dude. Like, Strava just had the feed challenge, right? Where like you do the challenge and you get like $15 off every quarter. Every little bit helps. And then the feed is nice too, because you buy a certain amount and you get store credit, which is cool. So, anywhere that helps, like I don't have any affiliation with the feed, but it seems to, give me a little bit less than, unless you see the Spring has like a website sale or.
Well, what I figured out is, dude, I think you can get it cheaper from Mountain Running Company than you can from the feed, because if you buy more than $50, they give you like 10 or 15% off.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. I wish I wasn't so darn far away.
Yeah, I know. I drive pretty close. There's one in Black Mountain, and there's one. For me, it's convenient, and like they don't always have everything you want, but if you can spend $50 on nutrition,
I always call ahead. If I'm going to make that trip, I call ahead and make sure they got what I need.
I would if I lived down here, but for me, it's
I know.
Go look at some shoes.
Yeah. Right on. Anything else? Anything else Zach wants to share about Zach?
I don't know, man. No.
Okay.
This was that
was a good conversation, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining. I want to thank Zach so much for coming on. Also congratulate him on accomplishing so much and wish him the best. Obviously, I talk to him pretty much on a daily basis on Training Peaks, as he's one of my athletes, but I want him to wish him the best at Bigfoot 200. So if you're interested, I will add Zach's Instagram. I think that's the only, he might be on Facebook. I'll have to look. I will put his socials, if you have questions for him, on the show notes. Okay, so if you have questions for Zach, feel free to reach out to him. He's such a great guy, and I appreciate you, Zach, for coming on and being a part of the podcast and telling us about your story. In other news, we're coming up quick on the High Lonesome 100. It's incredible. I sit here and record on June 19th. Juneteenth, and man, we're 1 month away. July 19th is race date out in Colorado. My daughter and I are preparing for our trip to Colorado. We're going to go out early and try to acclimate, do some hiking, and see the course. And we're volunteering at Hard Rock, which we're both very excited about. So in preparation for that, we're getting everything together, getting her gear together so that she's ready to go hike and be ready for all Colorado has in store for us. My two kids just finished up the national championships. They ran at the Adidas Outdoor National Championships in Greensboro, North Carolina. We had about 7 of the kids from our team that were competing. It was fun. We had a blast. Great weekend. A lot of fun with the kids. 3-day meet and included Father's Day. So happy belated Father's Day to all the dads out there. It was just an awesome weekend. Super hot. Oh my gosh. And we were all hitting a heat wave, but it was just hot for a track meet. But that's what it is in June, right? I got to see my old high school, Middletown High School, back in New York. They came down and had some success down there, so that was awesome to see as well. Real fun weekend, though. And training's going really well. I had a great training week. I talked about doing that 50K last Wednesday. Followed that up Friday with a good 18-mile run. Really nice run. Felt great. Recovered well. my progression runs. I've been doing progression runs to try to get some threshold in and increase my threshold, because my threshold, I just was not happy with where I sat with my threshold, much slower than what I'm used to, and I could tell, I just needed to kind of up my fitness game a little bit. So I've been doing threshold and strides every week. So I record this on Tuesday. Yesterday, Monday, I did about a half hour worth of surges. I did 30 seconds on, 2.5 minutes jog, and I was in Foster Creek, just a nice single track, just kind of ramping up the speed, a little bit of fartleks, a little bit of speed play, just kind of, getting the legs snapped up. We did a trail work on Monday night and got one of the trails at the Rugby Middle School finished. So I was a little bit tired from the trail work, but so happy to get that trail finished up. We're working on a big trail now. Actually have a trail work day this Saturday. So if you're around and want to come out to Rugby Middle School, 8 a.m., the Carolina Mountain Club, they're going to join us, and we're working on one of the big trails at Rugby Middle School that we'll be using for the cross-country season. So super excited about that. If you have questions, feel free to reach out, but I would love to see anybody that can make it out on Saturday. Again, 8 a.m., we'll be starting at Rugby Middle School. I'll try to put that information in the show notes. So you can, feel free to, like I said, feel free to reach out to me and let me know if you have any questions about that. And so we did the strides on Tuesday, and then today, my friend Nathan and I, we did a nice progression run. I wanted to get like a little climb in at the start. So we went from my house up Yellow Gap Road, which is a nice steady climb. It's about a 3-mile climb, get about 1,200 feet of elevation gain in 3 miles. And then we turned around and came back. And, my threshold pace is down 30 seconds from when I started. So it's coming around. Not quite to where I want to be. My goal is by November to have my threshold pace back down in the mid 6-minute range, 6:30 to 6:45, somewhere in that range. I was about 7:15 today. So, JFK is in November. Not trying to look through High Lonesome, but, that's one of my goals, is to kind of get my threshold pace back down. So I've been working on strides and threshold. I was talking with Nathan today. I'm not going to put I'll do a kind of a podcast on my training block for JFK, the 50 miler, but I'm not going to do a peak VO2 or max VO2 session, not a block, no block in this build, just because I want to try to stay injury free. And historically, it just seems anytime I try to do a peak VO2 block, I end up getting an injury. Just because of the intensity. And perhaps it's because I do too much volume at the same time. But I just don't want to make that risk. I don't want to take that risk anymore. So I'm just going to work on threshold and strides and work on getting my fitness up that way. And take it for what it is. Really enjoying the threshold work and kind of getting back to it. I felt a lot stronger today, a lot more capable. So like the way fitness is trending, especially here right before High Lonesome and going to high altitude. So this weekend, going to do the shut-in trail, where we throw in a few different peaks, bag a few different peaks along the way, and just going to get in my last real big long run prior to High Lonesome with some vert and practice with my poles. I had an accident yesterday. I kind of cut a piece of my fingertip off. So I'm hoping I can use my poles on Sunday. We'll see how my grip's doing. I also hope I'm able to hold some tools so I can do the work day, because we're going to work on Friday and Saturday on the trails out at Rugby. But anyway, that's here nor there. Hopefully that's fine. So training's coming along. Super happy about that. Love the questions that are coming in. Appreciate you guys so much. As always, thanks to my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys for being a part of this podcast, listening, sharing. It makes my heart sing when I hear from you guys that you're enjoying the podcast and taking so much away from it, because that's the goal of this. So thank you guys. I appreciate it very much. So until next time, my friends, keep moving forward, and running is life.